Welcome to Real Life, Real Love with me, Sarah Michelle, and my friend Hayley Anderson. So, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about if you should date multiple men at one time, like why it might be good for you and why you might not want to, so that you can kind of decide at different points in your life and what's right for you. Because we see a lot of other dating and relationship experts out there like making rules about it, and we're never strict with our rules, are we? So we thought we'd just have an open discussion about different points in our lives and our relationships and just kind of what we know about attachment and like biology, that sort of stuff behind why these coaches are recommending different things. So I'll just start by introducing myself real quick, and then you can, Hayley, introduce yourself. But I am Sarah Michelle, and I am a sex, love, and intimacy coach. My business is Happiness and Heals, and I help men and women get into the relationships that they truly desire. So how about you, Hayley? You want to share?
I am a personal stylist. I essentially help women step into their power, and my tool is clothing. So, clothing is something that a lot of people forget we communicate with, but also like to the outside world, but also to ourselves. So, when you're not having a good day, highly recommend don't put on your grey sweatpants. Actually, put on something that feels amazing, because sometimes we can't just lope around at home. Sometimes we actually still have to get up and, go to work. And it's a good idea to understand, I think, understand what we're communicating to ourselves and the world, and being able to do it for ourselves, because we're exposed to so much marketing. And this is, some of these conversations with commercial and media and like the messages, and we're told these are the rules and this is what we should do, versus who am I and how do I show up. And I had a client ask, about confidence and wearing clothes, confidence. And I was like, the number one thing is you. It's actually not a piece of clothing. It's what you bring to the table and the rules you make or don't make and aren't necessarily swayed by. Yes, we have to conform to some things like, wearing nice tailored clothing to the boardroom, or, wearing appropriate clothing in other situations, but you can do it your way. And that just feels so amazing. So I just help women claim that. Like, they already know basically what they want. And I just sort of go, yes, let's do it.
Kind of give them that extra boost to step forward confidently in it. I remember, this is on your topic and not our show topic today, but I remember when I used to work in an office setting and we were trying to convince the boss to let us wear jeans. We weren't customer facing. So it was just our office. And we're like, why can't we just wear jeans? They'd only give us like, if you donated $5 on a certain Friday to a charity, then you could wear jeans sort of days. And I started trying to research it to convince him to let us wear jeans more often. And I did not successfully research it, because basically the research showed that the more professional an office dressed, the more professional they showed up. And they found that in offices that did jeans days every Fridays, or went from like, I think it was law offices that the one study that I read. But anyway, it was definitely a professional office like that, like law or accountants or something. And they went from wearing suits to allowing khakis and polos. And they talked about how like production went down and how the people got so much more casual with each other. So I saw the research, but I also totally believe it, because me just working from home all the time, I meet with my clients over Zoom and stuff. There's a huge difference in the days that I get ready for like what we're doing here than the days that I roll out of bed and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to start working on my computer. I appreciate the flexibility, but it absolutely impacts your energy.
It does. And we influence each other. So I cannot remember the statistics, but there was a bunch of research done in terms of a person dressed in a nice tailored suit doing a couple of things that were illegal. And it showed people saw that person. It was crossing the street. It wasn't big game stuff. But it showed people would follow that person. They literally would got like that person was no more credible than they themselves, but they showed somebody dressed, which is, the topic of like salesmen and how that influences us just in what they're wearing. And like for me, for my heart, because, for us women, we are a little bit swayed by what goes on because we're taught that from birth. We're taught to, conform and go with the rules and, gather information and do the right thing and don't be the homewrecker. You need to keep everything together. And, like our topic today, like some people will say date 3 people, do the round dating thing. And then some people will say only date one person because it conflicts with X amount of stuff. And we get so narrowed into these boxes and forget we can influence ourselves. We can if we know we can influence ourselves and how powerfully and do those test runs, we can take back our power when somebody's influencing us. We're so mindful when we're in front of somebody, we can actually pause and be like, do I want this or am I being influenced by a suit? And it's a real question. It's actually a real question. It's not crazy. Like, those memes about when a man dresses in a suit and, how that changes everything, or it's real. It's actually a thing. And we can fight it or we can actually live with it in such a way where it's taking back our power on it and not feeling so influenced or unconsciously influenced. We don't know that that person is selling us a product or giving like if you're watching a TED talk with somebody wearing casual clothes as opposed to wearing business clothes, it changes how professional you see that person. It'll be like a doctor turning up in casual clothes. We would not pay as much attention to that person as if they were wearing a nice tailored suit. Like, it's just how it works. And so what I want, and I know what you want, and I know a lot of what women want, is to have our power back on these things, but not in a nasty way. Just actually as in, how can we have the best of this for everybody? How can I not be influenced to make purchases that may not be in my budget? How can I wear clothes in such a way where the days I just need to get some stuff done, what are the clothes that I can wear that give me that power, that get that stuff done so I can move on to some other things? Like, it's sort of strategic. Well, it is strategic, but it's emotional based.
Yeah.
Which people don't talk about. Like, we know we put on grey sweatpants or similar if we're not feeling well. We know that, but we don't click in thinking I can actually change that as almost like a switch and we can make a habit. I don't own grey sweatpants specifically because of how it makes me feel. So I just don't need that in my life. I would not pay money to wear those clothes to feel that way. I could feel that way in like a cocktail dress instead. I would rather feel fabulous and sad than like whatever terminology you would use to feel super sad in grey sweatpants.
I understand. I'm sorry I'm laughing at you. It just sounds so like girly, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We both like being feminine. So maybe I shouldn't have said it that way because you don't have to be girly to be feminine, but still. Okay, well, let's go back to our topic for the day. So we're talking today about if you should be dating multiple men at once. And I think this came up naturally as a conversation for us recently. When I first started, my cousin actually was the first person who introduced me to this idea. And to be completely honest, I was 18, and it's how I snagged my first husband because I was dating 2 guys at once. And I remember my cousin telling me, yeah, it's perfectly normal to date 2 guys unless he's asked you to be exclusive. Like, you can date whoever you want to date. So, and we were all going to college, to the same college together. And the guy that turned into my husband invited me out one Friday night. And I'm a fairly honest person. And so I was like, oh, I can't tonight. I have a date, but I could do it tomorrow if you want to. And he's like, what? You're dating people? And I was like, yeah, you've never asked me to be exclusive. And this like blew his mind. He was like, what do you mean? And I said, well, like, if you want me to be your girlfriend, we can talk about it, but I'm not your girlfriend. We've just gone on a few dates, so I'm dating someone else too. And I went out on the date that night. And the following Monday, so that was a Friday night, the following Monday, he showed up at my house after work and he had like flowers, a teddy bear, and he asked me to be his girlfriend. And then we were exclusive from that point forward. But that was just like my first kind of touch with it. After the divorce, many years later, because we were together for 14 years, I slowly got back into dating and dating more than one man at a time. My personal rule, and this is not anything anyone else has to take on, but my personal rule is I'll date as many people as I want, as long as we're not exclusive, obviously, then I consider that cheating. Um, but I'll only sleep with one of them at a time. I don't sleep with multiple partners at a time. So I don't know. Uh, I know where that came from and who suggested it to me, but it just felt good to me because I didn't want to be like, I was going to say cross contaminating. I don't know. You know what I mean, though? Like, I just didn't want to. It wasn't anything about being shameful. It was just more about like respecting the intimacy of.
Yeah, and the of it, which other people don't talk about. So you can, like, when you are intimate with somebody, you are crossing boundaries and creating a different energetic bond. It doesn't have to be a permanent bond because it can be a conscious decision. I, over the course of years, I struggled with the idea of dating multiple people. And then I started really actually looking into it back in like 2015, 16, because I really, really, really wanted to know what I was doing. I get completely obsessed when I want to learn something. I'm like, there's probably a book. Somebody probably talked about this already. Somebody's probably like me, one step ahead or 10,000, and like written a book, and I can just buy it, sit there and like absorb it, and then be like, what kind of decisions do I want to make today? I just about every topic, and this was one of them that I looked up, and a few people recommended it, and they recommended it for various different reasons. And I sort of developed my own way of feeling about it. And one of them, sometimes you don't actually have to tell anybody else on the planet if you're dating more than one person, because essentially what is dating, right? It's getting to know a person. With the conversation, most people is like to either create a bond or a relationship or get into a further committed relationship, whatever is the choice, or just for fun. And you're allowed to do that in any capacity you want, as long as you're being respectful for like yourself, what feels good, and if you're having a conversation with the other person, if it's relevant, like with your soon-to-be husband, then became husband. It was only relevant at that point in time because it had never come up. And I know a lot of women, there's like this taboo topic around it, right? A lot of women are quite shamed about it. There's like words supposedly for somebody who spends intimate time with more than one person. But then there's, the opposite of what people say about that. They're like, well, who's that person spending intimate time with? It's men. So there is actually just manipulated labels applied to it. And in some places in the past, I have dated one person at a time, and other times I've dated a couple of people. But similar to you, where it's just a date. Like, it's like getting to know that person as a person. We're not kissing or anything like that, because that's next level. That's gone, I kind of like you, which takes up normally more than one date, because you don't know. Like, I find we want to put on our best show, really, on a first date. We're going to dress our best, say our best, do all those things. So sometimes I find, because men are really good at that, they're really good at seducing, I want to see them in different ways. And sometimes you don't get to do that on a coffee date. You can't do, what some people recommend on the first date, do something adrenaline orientated, which I guess is another topic for another day. You could do something that's like going to like 2 or 3 venues at a time and creating a different experience.
You can keep talking. I'm going to grab a sheet of paper real quick. I totally want to make a note about what you just said.
So with dating, I found sometimes I talk to my girlfriend if I was feeling a little bit like anxious or confused, or other times it was just, I met somebody on a dating app, or I met somebody in real life, and I just said yes. Like, if it felt like the right thing to do, let's go out for a coffee. Like, if I have 3 coffees in 1 week with 3 different guys, it's not weird or illegal. What I think is important to remember is the reasons why we're doing what we're doing, and then keeping like back in alignment with ourselves. How does that feel for us? And if we're crossing a personal boundary, often I won't say anything to any of the guys. They don't need to know. I went on a coffee date with somebody else. I could go on a coffee date with somebody that's a complete stranger, which is the first date, and I don't need to tell that person. It's no different. It's just that my potential intention for that person was a potential intimate relationship. And I feel like sometimes that's where we trip over. We're like, oh, we shouldn't do that because what if they might be, a potential, but they're only a potential.
Yeah, I think like the best analogy I've ever used is it's kind of like when you have a best friend. Like you don't go out looking for a best friend and disqualifying people right away. Like, oh, you're not going to be my best friend, so you're going to be no one in my life. Like you go out and you just make friends, right? And you keep going. And as time progresses, someone just clicks more and more with you each day.
Yeah.
Someone stands out to you, and eventually that person, all of a sudden, you're calling them your best friend. And it's like that with dating because, like you said, it's no different than friendships, except for that your long term intention is this will be romantic. But, and I think that's something that people kind of get twisted. I end up talking to a lot of clients who have come out of either a significantly long term relationship or most of the time out of a marriage and they're dating for the first time in a long time. And there's all these fears around um, like kissing people and getting naked in front of new people, having sex, like that sort of stuff. And it's always like, slow it down. Like, I know that TV shows you, I know that pop culture shows you we're all sleeping with each other, but we're not all out here sleeping with each other. I've been divorced for 3 years and I've had three new partners, and I am a very confident person and I'm very like open and stuff. Like, we're not out here just sleeping around for the hell of it. And if you are, like, that's fine. We're not saying any judgment about it. I'm just saying, I think people get the perspective a little skewed from TV and pop culture and music and stuff like that. That it's perfectly okay to go on. I've never kissed a guy on the first date. Never, not once in my life. And it's perfectly okay for that to be your rule or for it just to be the way it happens. It's okay to be on multiple dates with a person and not physically move it forward and take your time to get to know them.
Yeah.
I think something that would be fun to talk about, because I know you also know a lot about it, is the chemistry of all of this.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that I love pointing this out is attachment styles. So I'm always, when I'm working with clients and myself and stuff, I'm looking for what is kind of their main attachment style. And if I find, which I do tend to work with a lot of women who skew towards anxious attachment styles, I do encourage them to date multiple people at once and still set up their own boundaries about it. I don't say like you have to date at least 5 or anything like that. But especially if you're doing something like online dating where there's a whole bunch of opportunity in front of you and you're not just sitting around waiting for a friend to match you up with someone or whatever, like definitely get on multiple dates, because when you first, especially as in an anxious attachment style, when you first meet someone, if there's anything about them you like, you really want to attach to them and you start to build a story around it. You start to build a future around it. The problem is that you're in this initial phase with this flood of feel good hormones, and they are too. And like you said earlier, you're both bringing your best self to this. And you need to slow it down a little bit, because now what's happened is you've actually literally moved out of the part of your brain to make good long term logical decisions. And you're making short term decisions at this point. You don't realize it because it all feels so good and it's so exciting. It's so new, but you are. And so if you date more than one person at a time, you can compare them. And I don't mean like sit down and write a spreadsheet or anything, but let's say, for example, you go out on this date and this guy just so happens to be better than the last person you went out with, and you're like, oh, this is amazing. But then next week you go on a date with someone else and he opens your door for you, and you're like, shit, I didn't know somebody would open my door for me in this day and age. I really like that. Like it's not even like it's about getting to know what you want and what you like better too, because you don't always know what you want until someone shows it to you.
Yeah.
So the more experience you can get, the better. And when I say more experience, like I kind of mentioned earlier, it doesn't have to be physical or sexual. It can literally just be getting into conversation and learning how to feel confident and learning how to take rejection without it truly being rejection. What do they say? Like redirection is
Yeah.
what they say.
Yeah.
Yeah, like really learning how to that's when I think that's when my confidence like skyrocketed was as soon as I learned how to not take these things personally and just go, we must not be a match. Like I was actually thinking about that earlier today because I saw this thing about millennials dating and 10 things they do wrong. And I thought it was fascinating. But one of the things was they were crapping on us for ghosting people. And I do not get society's hang up on ghosting. We might want to do an episode about that. I do understand that it hurts people's feelings. I totally get that. But to me, it's like it's redirection, like I just said. Like I'm not going to take it personally because if you choose to ghost me, that is completely on you.
Yeah.
And I don't want to marry someone who's going to be willing to do that. So it hurts and I'm going to feel it and I'm going to process it, but I'm going to move the hell on and I'm not going to stay hung up on this because it's no different than you like, I don't know what would be another deal breaker when you're dating someone, but it's just basically a deal breaker to me is all it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important to feel like, well, okay. So often on first dates, I have a couple of things that, because I've figured out what I want to see and how I want to feel on a first date, I will ask certain questions beforehand and get to really know them, especially if it's from online dating and we've never met. I want to know who I'm meeting in person. So, you can do voice calls, you can do video calls, you can have conversations at different times of the day. But often I want to go for a coffee date because most men want to, it could be an age thing, but they want to, be done with their work day or done with their week, and they want to go out and let off some steam. And I that person is like in their day-to-day life because I'm a solo mom, so I need to know what that person's like in real life all the time, not just like once every 2 months when they go out for like 3 drinks. I actually need to know more of that stuff. So like I want to see that person on a coffee date. I want to see them broad daylight. What coffee are they drinking? How are they holding their face? How was their tone changing? And I figured out how I want to be on that date as well. Like what do I want to wear? I don't want to show up wearing like my sexiest outfit that I would do for an evening date. I want to show up wearing something probably nice. It's probably midday during my work day.
Yeah.
So it's going to be in the middle of my day, but also it's going to break up and have a bit of fun. And I'm just going to see that person where they're at during the day and how that feels. And I've managed to monitor myself, which is important if you're going to date more than one people. You get to see who you are in front of different types of people. So I see in different situations, if I have to park ages away from the cafe and then walk and it's a hot day, I am not a good fit when I get to that cafe. I'm an absolute mess. And then I'm going to want a coffee and then I'm probably going to talk too much. And I've worked out, Hayley, don't have 2 coffees on a date. Just don't. Like I've worked out things that I should not do. And I've only done that because I let myself not have rules around how many dates I need to have with this person or how many people at the same time. It's not like you're all hanging out in the same room, but at the same point in time, that would be fun. Like if you went to an art gallery and there's a few different of them there and see how they interacted or, how they interacted with you, etc. You're allowed to do that. And I'm not saying we're allowed to copy men because some of that can be ruthless, but they are. So it's not like it's actually something crossing a man's personal boundaries. They're often talking to like 5 other women at the same time. And if you pick something like a coffee or to go for a walk or whatever kind of date that you want, I highly recommend people try a day date first, broad daylight, everything. Nobody can come at you with like, on your first date, you were dressed super sexy, and then every time after that, you're not. And so it sets up in their mind like this is who you are. But I'm only like fully dressed, like proper dressed up to go out, like maybe once every 6 months. So for me, I want the realism, and the realism is going out for coffee. It is going out for coffee, maybe even more than once in a week with one person. And that's totally fine. And seeing them on different days and seeing myself and how I am around that person. Am I calm and confident? Am I like, tripping over my words? Am I totally flabbergasted by their accent? So I'm a Kiwi and I live in Australia. And there are a lot of other cultures here with different accents. And I have been on dates and I've just looked at that person and thought, do not ask me too many questions because I don't know what you're saying. I don't know. And it's so embarrassing, but I can spend more time with that person and understand what they're saying without it being like overwhelming. And first dates are overwhelming, right? And we put so many eggs into the basket. Like, I've spent 2 weeks talking to this person, or I spent like the last 48 hours nonstop talking to this person. We build up in our minds that potential, but it doesn't exist. That scenario of how women invest in potential, but men invest in now, and how that crossover becomes a big problem with dating, because we are dating, investing in the potential. They're not. They're investing in who you are now, which works if you understand who you are on a date, which I think you can only do if you try them more than once. Like if you try ice cream once and it just happened to be like caramel and all your favorite things, you're only going to have that one perspective of ice cream. But if you had 3 different flavors and one was like, it had like a texture to it, like a hard candy texture in it, and another one had like, I don't know, chunks of nuts or marshmallows or something, and one was smooth, it's a different opportunity to know what you kind of like with zero commitment. You're not investing in the potential of buying 10 more liters of that ice cream.
Men are like ice cream. I love it. What a fun little webinar that would be. Men are like ice cream, and here's why.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I agree, though. I have done all different types of dates, and I have literally gone on a date after an exercise class. I'm not a big sweater, so it was probably okay, but I do remember calling my friend because I was like in the back of my minivan using like kids' butt wipes, like just kind of cleaning up, switching my top and heading out. And I've also gone on dates where I've like completely dressed up, dress, hair, makeup, everything. The way I always do it is just basically what I feel like. What do I want to do? Because the truth is, I'm multifaceted. So whoever ends up dating me is going to get a ton of different versions of me over the course of dating. And they're going to have to be okay with that if it ends up with any sort of commitment. But I do hear women saying like it takes too much time to date and things like that. And I just don't think it's true. I think it takes too much time to date if you don't know what you want and you don't have good boundaries. But if you have those things in place, you don't have any problem. Like, for example, and I think this is just good anyway, is to set some boundaries with people as you're dating them, just to kind of see how they respond to boundaries and if they respect them. And I don't mean anything like you don't have to be harsh by any means, but if they text you kind of late at night and you're already like you should already be asleep, but you caught their message or whatever, don't respond until the morning. And then in the morning, just be like, oh, hey, I go to sleep at 9 o'clock because I get up early for work. So, um, I'll respond in the morning when you send late night messages or something like that, and just kind of find out if they follow that or not. But you can always do that. The other thing that I do is I tend to let people know, oh, I have my kids this week, so I'm not going to be next to my phone a lot, and then it's like, I don't feel any pressure to respond to them right away, nor should they expect it. Even
Mm-hmm.
if I don't tell them, but I love to inform people. Because I like to be informed. I like people to do the same for me. But also, like people will talk about getting ready for dates, how much time and energy and money it takes to have these outfits and all that stuff. And I'm like, bullshit. You could literally have one date night outfit. It's going to be different people. Like, have the same thing, have the same set of makeup, like whatever you want. Like
Yeah,
it's not you because you have to show up as you.
mm-hmm. And I forgot to talk about the biochemistry about it before. So
Oh,
because
yeah.
we're investing in potential, if we put all our eggs in one basket and we see that person and we're like banking on that, we're building actually a biochemical response to anything they do, and we're building an attachment with that person. And if you are consciously dating, or potentially you may just go out on a date with one guy and you're just not exclusive and you may get another date this week, it changes like how much power you have inside and how you stand firm and how you stand confident and how much you're attached to one person. And this is where sometimes you can get straight back into past abusive patterns or past bad habits or things that you don't want, because it's easy for us to go for something that feels comfortable. We may want to change something from like a marriage or a long-term relationship. And if we go into, which I believe, if we go into dating one person, we get one perspective, and it's super easy from a biochemical and neurological perspective to do the same thing we've already done in the past. It's like in your mind, it's a hard-worn road, and your mind always takes the easiest path. You've got your brain, like the way I think about it is your brain is like electrical signals, and electricity takes the fastest path. Always remember that. Don't touch it. So in your brain, it's going to take the fastest path, and it's going to take the most well-worn path with all the neurological connections. So if you're dating one person and they seem similar or familiar or something that you like and you already know you like it, it's something that you've already been exposed to, and there's potential you may not end up in a different kind of relationship, and you'll go out and keep repeating the same patterns because your brain is biochemically and neurologically wired to do the same thing. And that's like, and a lot of people, if they're like, this one's different, and your friend's like, but he sounds the same. And often you will have dated that one person, you will have created some kind of investment in that potential and an attachment. And if you kiss or hold hands or create some of that nice bonding of the biochemistry, you want that hit again. And so you're focused on that. And it's not the best recipe, right? Sometimes the best recipes come from if you've got different ingredients in the cupboard and you try something different, and it's like the best muffins you ever made, and it just was something that you tried different, and it was just an option. And if you're, so over the course of 1 to 2 weeks, you go out on like 2 to 5 dates, that's 2 to 5 different ways where you are not bonding with something that is a potential. You're actually just seeing that person for who they are, and you're creating more what feels like to me structural confidence. Like I imagine and envision your shoulders are pulled back, you know, you're sitting better in your posture because you're not like, oh, this person has to be something. It's more like, who is this person? Because there is potential in another person. So it's almost like reallocating where you invest your potential. And you just go, well, what is this? Like, you're not like, this ice cream has to be the best. It's more like, is this ice cream the best? Do I like ice cream?
Yeah. And something I was thinking about early on as you were saying about the chemical responses and like familiarity is a lot of times people coming out of abusive relationships need time alone before they step into new relationships. I'm not a big believer on setting a specific time frame for anyone, because I do believe people come in and out of our lives in sort of a predestined way. And like, I believe in fate and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not super set on any rules around that. But when you're coming out of a relationship that was abusive, you don't really know who you are because you've lost yourself in that relationship. If you hadn't lost yourself, you wouldn't have been in it because you would have been in your power, in your confidence, and you wouldn't have put up with that shit, which is exactly what you started to do towards the end of the relationship and probably why you're not in it anymore, right? So you took those steps, you're moving in the right direction. That's great. But you need a little bit of time to like learn to love yourself again, because chances are this person taught you on some level that you're worthless, and you need to remember like, no, I'm amazing. And here's why I'm amazing. Maybe I'm not the same as this girl over here, this woman over here, but I am myself and I'm amazing. And what you'll see is like, if women don't take the time after a relationship to kind of step back into that, is they'll Like you said, they'll find the same partner in different bodies, but it's not always the exact same thing. It might be a step forward. Like, oh, the last one was physically abusive to me. This one's only verbally abusive. And you don't recognize that because all you're recognizing is he doesn't hit me. It's so great. Can you believe it? I'm in a relationship with this man who takes me on dates and he never hits me. And you're like, your friends are like, what the fuck, you know? But but it's true. Like we do it because we get so, I can't think of the word that I'm looking for. Like it becomes our normal when we're in a relationship. Everything becomes normalized for us there, but that doesn't mean it's truly what's meant for us or what's good for us or what we can claim in the world. And so the more you can take that time to just like resituate and create a new foundation for yourself, then you can go out and date multiple people. And maybe that's something you mentioned, you touched on this, but that we should be clearer on is dating multiple people doesn't mean that you have like 5 guys that you're continuing to date over and over. It
Yeah.
could be like
Fun.
I online date, but I don't love it, love it. So when I feel like I have the time, energy, I'm excited about it, I want to be doing it, I'll turn the online dating profile on for a couple weeks, a month or whatever, and I'll just line up some dates. Usually by the end of that, someone has either stood out to me or I have some other version of clarity of like, I don't want to keep doing this. Oh, I need to work on this instead, so I'm going to take a step back. Whatever it may be. But like a lot of these people, when you're dating multiple people, will just be 1, maybe 2 dates. It's pretty easy to weed people out.
Yeah. And not invest in that person has to be the thing. Like if you think about it from I could date multiple people, as in I don't have to date this one person and really get to know them. It's like a natural progression where you may go on like one date with this person 1 week, and time wise and life wise, and then you can keep talking to them and you may talk to somebody else. And if you're exploring, you may just find this person you went on a date with worked the first time, but then you talk to this person and the second date with this person actually turned up some different information that was not present on the first date. And because you weren't like, he has to be or this one does, you're just observing and just enjoying and being present with that person, which men actually fully appreciate. They fully appreciate when we just be present. We're not like the 20 questions we need to like, what is your future? And tell me about your relationship with your ex-wife. And, you know, what is your parenting arrangement? And tell me, you know, what was your contribution to the breakup of the marriage? Or like yuck. And it's yuck for us because that's not who that person is. They are just choices that person made. And if we're going to come at this from a place of love, which is what I believe we should, I'm not telling you what to do, but let's do that. It's who is this person now? You can look at the past and you can consider what you would like in the future, but it's essentially you're designing it. It's not real yet. And so you can't invest in something that's real. What's real is the person in front of you. And they may be going through, you know, similar things to you. They may be talking to 5 other people. And so if you're keeping within what feels right for you and you're not sleeping with multiple people or whatever energetically feels like the right thing. So I know a lot of people who work in energy fields believe this, and some people just morally believe it. If you sleep with more than one person, it can tangle up your energetic cords and actually can, it's a biochemical and interesting situation, like you say, cross contamination, and it energetically changes because it changes your like biochemistry with that person, and it sort of gets in the way sometimes of some other conversations you could have. So if you went on a date with a guy and you sleep with him on the first date, that's okay. You do not have to be exclusive with him. You just check in with yourself what you would like to do, because you may have just had a weak moment, or you may be like, he's really good, but I would like to come at this from a real level-headed, because if you're going to create a relationship with somebody and you're listening to a show like this, you probably don't want a trauma bond. You probably don't want to, get stuck in the same patterns. You probably don't want to get stuck in anything that doesn't align with your higher self and the version you're creating for yourself. Your vision board, your manifestation is different to the past. And so you're allowed to take a step back and say, okay, well, what would I like from that now? And you can have the conversation with him. You can just be like, that actually never happens. But what I would like now is to get to know you better, or I would like to go out on a coffee date with you, or what feels like the right thing, and meeting them now, which is what I started talking about, like meeting them where they are at now, even if you got to past the point of sleeping with them, even if you don't really know, if you're present with a man, he will appreciate that so much. And one trick, I don't know if we've talked about this in the past, that I've learned is to ask a man to bring you back into your body too, because we get stuck in our thoughts, we get stuck in our energetic bodies. And if you really, really want to change something for yourself in the future and you're struggling, you can ask him when you're in conversation, just touch my arm. Like if you're sitting across from each other or at the movies or having a conversation, like just if you ask him to touch your arm, it's non-sexual, it's grounding, it's something you can do to even a stranger, to like grab them and hold them. It brings you back into your body so you can have those conversations. It also tests things of, can they be there for you in ways when you're not there for yourself, and create that team effort, etc. But it gives you a chance to be present with him now, and he's going to appreciate that, and he'll also appreciate, because if you do it right, you'll actually also activate his hero instinct, because he kind of saved you from like going up into the clouds. And if you appreciate, him bringing you back into real life, like it just becomes this really nice situation that happened, and then you can go and reproduce that. But being present with him is super important. And as you and I know, sometimes to do that, you need to not be investing in potential. You just invest in the person now and invest in yourself and what you want. And sometimes that's easiest if we don't think this is the one. If we just think, well, Mark is going to text me tomorrow and we may have a coffee date. And so it actually makes you evaluate this person in front of you with a bit more heart and soul, because you'll be like, what is the substance of this person? Like, is this what I want? Or do I just want to like round date and actually date a few different people and be, non-sexual with them? And if you know that this is not the one, you're just actually dating the person right in front of you, you can have really good conversations and make really good new choices. And you get to do it with that person, because you don't have to say you're dating multiple people. You can just say where I'm at. Like, don't wait 2 months to have the conversation with this guy. That's not okay. Like, you can do it on the first or second date. Like, there are no real rules. The only rules that you've got are what works for you inside and what works for you, like mentally and emotionally, and feeling from that point, and asking for that person and say, look, I've just come out of, a 15-year marriage. I'm really unsure of what I want. You don't have to say, look, I'm dating other people. You can just say, I'm unsure of what I want. So I am dating this is what I want to figure out, and meet that person where they are. And he's going to appreciate it so much, because he deserves that, and you deserve the space to have that conversation. And if he doesn't let you have that conversation and cuts you off, you know to cut him off, right? Because that's who you are and where you're at. And in the background, what works for you as a strategy is knowing that maybe you'll have a coffee with Mark tomorrow. And if this conversation with this person doesn't work out based on where you're at, well, it might work with Mark.
So I want to clarify something, and if it feels like I'm putting words in your mouth, correct me. But I just want to make sure that as women are listening, that when you say like not to get attached to it because I'm trying to remember the exact words you said. It was just a little while back because I didn't want to interrupt you. And you were talking about like, well, I might have a coffee with so-and-so tomorrow. He might text and ask. To be clear, we're not suggesting that you play any sort of games.
Mhm.
or that you should not have the boundaries that feel good to you. So the reason I'm saying this is because sometimes, like, especially on TikTok, there seems to be some trend about people that are like, why do I have to act aloof? Why do I have to act detached when normally I'm a person who wants to be texted every day? Or I want to, like, definitely show up as you. Just don't overinvest in something that isn't there. Like, figure out what that is for you, right? So I'm having a feeling sometimes my feelings are stronger than the clarity of my words, and I'm trying to figure out, like, I'm trying to verbalize what I'm feeling. It feels important. Do you know
Mhm.
what I'm trying to say here?
Not entirely.
That's fair. That's fair. I was just hoping you could take over if you did. Um, so I guess what I'm trying to say, let me see if I can do it better with an analogy instead, is like I might have to wait on this one because my mind is going blank as I'm trying to say this out loud. So let me wait on it. And if it comes back, I'll bring it up. If it comes back after this episode, I'll make a note of it and we can talk about it another time. I think it's important, but I need to find my words for it first. So, okay, so we were talking about though dating multiple guys. We brought up a few different things as we've been talking about like the style of date, what to wear on the date, how much time to invest in the date and the person.
Yeah, and just to have more fun with it, not be disposable fun with that person, but realizing you're allowed to have fun. I think in some of the past clients that I've worked with, they look at this like there's pressure, I should only focus on one person, etc., etc. But they're coming at this from like that space. And a man's going to feel that because men are actually very in touch with their emotions. They just don't externalize it. It's a whole other conversation. They're very aware of that. And men are also really in touch with what they will, boundaries they will have in their life and they won't. And they just will not date somebody that feels uncomfortable to be around. They just won't. And I've actually had this conversation on a couple of dates with men because I like to have conversations with people and meet them where they're at. And this is how I've learned a lot of the information I've learned is because I've just sat in front of a man and gone, hey, tell me about this. Like, I'm really curious. And men will only do what feels right for them. Full stop. And we get jealous over that, right? We just think, I want that. And you can. Like some men, granted, they may not do it as wholehearted as a woman might, but you will. So we don't want to apply a thing saying, if you're going to date multiple people, you're going to do it heartlessly. No, no, no. You do what works for you. Like I enjoy coffee dates. I actually do because I know that my brain is going to stay engaged. I'm seeing that person normally in broad daylight. I'm seeing, meeting them where they are. I will try and do something that's close to either before work or in the middle of work as opposed to the weekend. That's a different conversation and a different kind of day. And I'm fascinated to know what this person like is like most of the time. And also it's a super bonus if they work somewhere near me or they're the type of person who's running their own business and they can literally just get in the car and come and meet me, like bonus points. And I'm like, oh, so I would have asked that question necessarily, but because I've organized something that works for me, I find out other pieces about that person and then we can have more conversations about it as opposed to it being tricky. But doing what works for you and makes you feel your best actually works for the man in front of you
Yeah.
because they want you to feel your best.
Let's before we wrap up, let's circle back around to the idea of do you need to inform anyone? Because we've kind of brought this up a few times organically today, but let's talk about it because a lot of us, I think, have been cheated on.
Yeah.
Um, and we don't want to be anywhere near seen as a person who would do that. And we don't want to be with someone who would do it to us again, like we've been hurt by it. This isn't cheating though, because you're not in a committed relationship yet. I personally don't inform anyone unless the conversation comes up. Like if we seem to be progressing in a relationship where it's like, hey, are we exclusive? Are we not? And it's kind of time to have that conversation because either you want to be exclusive with that person or you're afraid that they see it that way and you're not ready for it. Like it's fine to have that conversation. In fact, it's healthy, I think. But I don't think you have to. If I went back to my 18-year-old self with that story I started this whole thing out with, and I told him, like, oh, I can't see you on Friday because I already have a date. I would have just said today, I would have just said, oh, I already have plans on Friday. Can you do Saturday? I wouldn't have even mentioned anything because I also don't. Sometimes I feel like if you say it to a guy, that they think you're playing games, like you're trying to make them jealous. And I don't. I'm not playing games. I'm not trying to make you jealous. I don't want you to feel jealous because I don't like feeling jealous, so I want to treat you with the same respect I expect from you. So I really actually try not to say anything unless it needs to come up because it's a matter of, respect and honoring the relationship that we are creating.
Yeah. And it sounds like you're withholding information, but you're not. And if you're like both of us, when we've come up against this, you can call a girlfriend and be like, hey, like I call a rock. I've got a couple of rocks that I call when I'm like, oh my God, I need like somebody to reflect back to me, and they're just cool, calm, collected, and like, you know what? You're not being a silly sausage. You're not. You're actually doing all the right things. I like it when my girlfriends call me out on how spastic I am being or how spastic I think I'm being. And they're like, you're actually not, you're doing the right thing. Or it is smart to call a girlfriend and be like, I went on a date with this guy and this other guy asked. Like if you're online dating, there is potential that you're having different conversations at different points in time. And you're allowed to do that, and you're allowed to go out on a coffee date or a wine date or whatever date you want, and you can do it more than once, and you just check in with what works for you. You're not breaking any boundaries unless you do something against your own barriers. And you can honestly just sit in front of that guy and tell them the honest truth. You can be like, at the moment, I've left a relationship, or this is what I'm moving through. And because you and I know, and we recommend, because you can only heal so much by yourself, and in the rest of the healing and stuff, especially from the past, it's not that person's place, but you can tell them where you're at, and they may actually help in the progression of your healing on a certain subject that you're working on. And it may be dealing with your anxious attachment style. And like, I know I've had conversations with men that I've dated, not the one-off dates, but specifically men that I've come into like more of an exclusive dating situation. We've stopped seeing other people. We've talked about that. We're in each other's lives, meeting children and doing that sort of stuff. And I tell them where I'm at, and I say, I get really anxious when you don't text me back for this reason. And I will be really honest and say it's because my ex did this, and this is where it led down. So my mind goes there, and I don't believe this of you, but this is my experience. And I don't want you to just have a panicked version of me and not know where it's coming from and judge me from that. We're not a clean slate anymore, and we're allowed to have these conversations. But in terms of like, if you were dating multiple people, or potentially, let's just say it's really more potential dating. Like one guy asked you out on a date, so you said yes, and you don't know where it's going. And you're talking to another guy and he asks you out on a date and you say yes. You can say yes, and then it may take 2 months to have those dates. And that can be classed as multiple dating. Like it's just because you're not exclusive. But you can say to that person where you're at. Like you can be like, well, I went on a date with this other guy, and this happened, and see his response if you want. You're allowed to. You can't do this wrong. This is what I think is the most important thing to remember. And you're allowed to you can say, as much as I love words and communication, I still fall all over myself about it. And I will say point blank to a man sitting in front of me, my words are not necessarily my best. And sometimes I get really anxious and flustered. And so all of this combined, I'm going to sit in front of you and panic because I want to do all of the right things. And you're allowed to say that. And he's going to either appreciate it and recognize the person that you are. And if he doesn't, it gives you more information on, do you want to see this person again?
Yeah.
You know, if this person is unable to handle an emotion that you're discussing, not throwing at him, discussing, can this person handle when your daughter breaks her arm at school and you need him to pick her up? Like, the more important things, like if they're tripping over small things with you, like your emotions that are yours and they're fully contained, and all you're doing is verbalizing it, can that person do a different kind of thing? And I think, sometimes these are the reasons why it's important to be okay with dating more than one person, because that means you get to see what it's like to have these conversations without any attachment on their response. And if you are a person who is a devoted type person and you've become devoted like that, love language, and you've become devoted in the past to the wrong people, it's a good idea to set up your girlfriend support network or a friend support network and say, right, I'm dating people and I'd really like to date more than one person, and set yourself up for success and say, I want to go on 5 different dates this month. And if I call you in a panic, can you please be there for me? You can literally put those plans in place and create your own success and be okay with it, and be okay if it falls apart. And you've created that safe container outside. So this is what I believe, when you're a devotional person, you want that person that you're dating to be your safe container. So you'll go there. But if you know you're a devotional person and you ask a friend or two to be that safe container, you're not throwing it all at that person and in that basket. And you're, one, setting yourself up for success because you literally have shared your plans with somebody else. But 2, you've also not pushed it on that person, and your style, and you've gone, okay, I'm super devotional, but I really need to figure out something different. And you can bring this to your friend who's going to love you as well. They're going to love that you've asked them to support you in your endeavors. And they're going to want the best for you too. They're going to be like, girl, call me at 3 a.m. I'm here for it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing everything today, like always.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to share before I wrap it up?
No, I think it's important that you remember why you're doing this and set yourself up for success. And if you feel like you're coming up against taboos, it's important that you get support. So you could have friends, or you could reach out to a coach, and you can ask, this is what you do. Like, you offer this support to people who don't want to go to friends, or they want somebody who's actually studied it and does it as a job. Like, this is what their expertise is. Like, the amount of dating and relationship coach friends that I've got, and seeing their content online and having private conversations and even having private sessions, has changed the way that I function in relationships and day to day. And I don't take things so personally, like you say, like at the beginning, like, don't take it what they say or don't say. Like, it changes the way it functions, and it puts the power back in your seat, not manipulative power, but just back on like what's right for your heart and the life choices and the life you want.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, ladies, thank you so much for joining me and Hayley today. Be sure to take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Leave any comments below if you want to share about something that you found interesting in today's episode, or if you have ideas for a future episode, anything that you would love some perspective or advice on, please leave a comment below, and we will see you next week. Thank you.
Bye.